So, are you going to be pitching in, or am I just going to be doing everything? Regiment exclaimed as he flew away from the monstrosity he summoned. The Godslayer format of Jax was currently being dogpiled by about 4 of the creatures as they attempted to chew their way through his armor plating, as he suddenly exploded in a burst of red. Fire began to shoot out of multiple segments of his body as they all clung to him, and he forced himself into a rapid spin, and they began to fly off in multiple different directions, finally throwing the last of them. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know we were measuring up," Jax replied. "But fine, since we're breaking out bigger toys, might as well push things up a bit," he said, as his chest appeared to open up somewhat. "Level 1 limiter, ejection," he said, as from the core of his chest, an object seemed to shoot out. Nothing massive, simply a small fragment of material that seemed to glow a bright white color, but began to fade away as it drifted from his form, and his chest seemed to close back up, as suddenly the red glow that his body emitted began to glow brighter, fire now shooting from his body in all of those strange places. But before, it was only in bursts. Now it seemed as if there was a steady stream of it, simply pouring out, as a smile lit across his face. "Level 2, overburn status," he announced as he rocketed forward, heading for a group of the enemies at breakneck speed. He was, in fact, nearly twice as fast as he was before, bolting out at one of the creatures, lashing out with a punch that was completely covered in fire, as it seemed to propel itself right through the sternum of the creature. He punched a hole straight through it, the fire still gouting out from the other end where his fist was, as he rapidly pulled it free and kicked the beast to the side, beginning to bolt to another. This one was in a group, about 3 of them, harrying a group of Jaxes that were trying to fend them off. He swooped in with a rapid kick, sending one of the creatures flying. In the moment, Delius could have sworn that he could hear the cracking of its bones in space, as its form contorted around the kick that sent it propelling offwards like a bullet. Another of the creatures tried to lunge at Jax, but in a rapid flare of fiery movement, he evaded, swirling around and giving it a knee to the sternum, as the creature coughed up more of that rainbow-colored blood. And before it could even steady itself, Jax grabbed hold of its arm with his left hand, rapidly raising his right, and in a single solid stroking motion, moving exceptionally fast, he brought his other arm down into the shoulder of the creature and chopped right through it with his bare hand. The creature screamed out as its remaining limbs attempted to scramble away, the final creature in the cluster beginning to head for Jax as he rushed forward at it, grasping onto its neck, and as that steady stream of fire flowed out from every orifice in his body, he clutched at it, and once again Jax heard the sickening snap of its bones as the creature seemed to fall limp, and he released it to float off into space, turning his attention to the one remaining creature, still nearby him, struggling with a missing arm, as the rainbow blood was starting to subside, and what looked like some sort of growth was beginning to protrude. It was trying to regenerate its arm. The fire intensified even more as Jax sent himself into a rapid spin, so fast that he looked like a wheel of fire, darting towards the creature like a rocket. His leg outstretched, it made contact with the creature's head, and what looked like an explosion, the creature's body was sent sailing off into space, minus one head, as a blaze of fiery trail exited from the site of the explosion, heading out to look for more enemies. Now that's better. To think you've been lollygagging about this entire time, Regimen said. Well, nevertheless, he exclaimed, raising his hand and snapping his fingers again, as his cane and the gun he was wielding appeared beside him once again. As he grasped it, its cold iron exterior seemed to begin to refill itself, the red energy of his body beginning to course into the gun, alighting those spider veins of red light that filled it before. And refilled. Let's play, he exclaimed as he aimed the gun and began to fire off at the incoming enemies. Now they were digging deeper and deeper into the asteroid field. The number of the creatures was intensifying. For a while, their increased efforts seemed to sustain, battling off these new increasing numbers. Good, Jax's voice exclaimed over the communication system. We're almost there. We're bypassing the exterior of the asteroid field. T-20 to the center. Keep your head in the game. Their numbers are increasing. There are far more of them than I initially expected. But kudos to you. You seem to be handling it well. Delius, what's going on with you? What do you mean? Delius exclaimed as he attempted to fight off a flurry of the creatures, 5 of them, slashing into one before another lunged out from the right. He parried it away with his sword. As another came in from behind, without even turning around, Delius could sense it, wheeling into a roundhouse kick that sent the creature flying. He could no longer afford to simply make sure they were dead. If he didn't keep the numbers around him low enough, they might overwhelm him. He didn't want to find out if they could hurt him or not. They were fairly strong, so it was more than possible. However, he was still feeling very strange effects, his vision still blurring from time to time. Come on, give me a sit rep, Delius. The radiation levels around you are going completely wonky. What the hell's going on? Well, I'd like to explain it to you, but I'm a little bit busy fighting for my life at the moment. If you're wondering what's going on with me, the best I can say is it's weird. I don't know how to explain it. But for the moment, my body seems to be holding. But there are definitely some strange things going on. I think it's the radiation in this place, but I can't be sure. I've never really experienced anything like this. It's throwing me completely off. It's hard to focus. I thought you'd be okay in this, Delius. I mean, your body produces this radiation. Why would it be hurting you? Jax replied, sounding fairly concerned. We can't afford to have you going down, Delius. You're one of the only 3 people out there that can actually hurt these things. Do you need to return to the ship? Maybe I could give you a quick scan over, see what's going on. It'd be better than losing you from the battlefield entirely. No, Delius replied. I'm fine, just a little weird, okay? We have to finish this. My entire system isn't going to save itself, Delius exclaimed as he slashed through another of the creatures, parting it in 2. Okay, I'll let you stay for the time being, but I hope for your sake you know what you're doing. I don't know if you've ever been in a war before, but going down on the battlefield is not a good thing when there are enemies everywhere. These things are fast and damn strong. If enough of them get a hold of you, I'm not sure if my people can get to you in time. I know what a battle is like, Delius replied. Don't worry about it. I'll be fine, he said as he jumped from the asteroid he was on towards another grouping of the creatures. Strange sensations beginning to take hold. Again, he could feel his vision doubling and blurring. And then, a new sensation seemed to strike Delius. Suddenly, it was as if he felt as if he were in water. Clearly, he knew he wasn't. He was in space. His body wasn't moving as if he were in water. And yet, the feeling that there was something solid or semi-solid around him, something that he could interact with, began to become more and more prevalent the deeper they went into this field. As he landed into the next cluster of enemies, propelling his sword into the first one that he came in contact with, before kicking it off. Delius felt that he might have been too hasty. He forgot to get his footing again. He wasn't standing on anything, and there was nothing to push off of. It was heading right for him. He needed to parry, because he couldn't move. But, strangely enough, he felt a reflex that he's felt many times before. The reflex to evade when an enemy is attacking. Except, he shouldn't have been able to. In space, with nothing to push off of, he should have just been stuck there. And yet, nonetheless, Delius suddenly felt his body move, as if he simply willed it, as if he could feel this invisible, non-existent water around him, flowing, and simply use that flow to pull him to the side, dodging the creature as it slashed out at him. Delius quickly countered, slashing into it, sending it hurtling off into space, spiraling, bleeding out that rainbow blood. Again, the other creatures in the area began to flock to him, rushing in his direction. And yet again, that feeling, as they began to approach, the sensation that he could move. And just as before, he did, actually closing in on the creatures instead of dodging, slipping between the two closest in a series of motions to rapidly find himself at the one at the back. With a single swing of his sword, he cleaved its head off. How am I doing this? Delius thought to himself. Doesn't make any sense. How can I maneuver? And yet I'm doing it nonetheless. And he thought to himself, as he noted that he began to see it, the flow of rainbow energy that poured out from his own body. And as he did, he noticed that it was interacting with the radiation around him. And as he willed it, the radiation around his body would cling to the radiation outside of it, beginning to forcefully move him, like being pulled by gravity, the energy in his body acting like a magnet to the other energy, pulling his body in the direction of his will by connecting to the energy that was in that direction. Instead of pulling the energy to him, he was pulling himself to the energy. And as he did, his body seemed to fluctuate, absorbing small amounts of it. He could feel it, and now he was beginning to be able to see it. This is most definitely not something that Delius expected. However, it was not a blessing that he was going to be turning down, given the situation.